Good morning, Sherrill. Welcome to the Fireside Chat event. Welcome to Story Zone's book club, and we're very happy to interact with you today this morning, and happy to meet you. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. It's early here in San Diego, but I'm doing fine.
Great. You are our first author guest who is an expert in writing fiction for children, and that detective fiction and mysteries. So I'm very fondly reminded of my childhood years growing up, and I think there is a bit of me that still is addicted to those books. I still go back to my Harry Potters and Percy Jacksons periodically. So I think this conversation is going to be a lot of fun, and looking forward to our conversation today.
I am too. Thank you.
Great. So why don't you just tell us a little bit to start with about the detective novel series that you've written for children for our viewers here, and definitely I'd like to probably then talk to you a little bit about your journey as an author, how things evolved, where you started from, what were the first books that you read. I know I read on your website this was a Nancy Drew is big in your life. So we'd just like to hear from you how it all came about, and how life led you to this point where you started writing and thinking about these characters.
Okay. I have always loved reading and writing, and in fourth grade, which I was about 9 years old, I really took off with reading. I majored in literature in college, and I became a teacher. And I've taught every grade from kindergarten all the way through high school. And I was fortunate to be able to teach literature, which involved reading and writing, of course. And that's kind of how it came about. I've just always loved that. And I knew that when I was in fourth grade, I wanted to become a writer someday.
Wow.
So
that early?
I did. And so I retired from teaching 10 years ago, and I started writing my Botanic Hill Detectives Mysteries for kids.
So what was the school grade that you used to teach?
I taught every single grade, from kindergarten through grade 12 in high school. But my last 10 years, I taught fourth grade and fifth grade.
That is quite a spectrum of age group and demography to educate. So I'm sure it was a fun journey for you.
It was. It was a 35-year journey.
Oh, bless me. I mean,
Yeah.
that sounds like mind-blowing. Tell us a little bit about your years as a teacher. I'd really like to understand. And I'm guessing you were teaching them English or literature or something like that?
I was teaching reading, writing, language arts, which includes grammar,
Okay.
and conventions of writing, all that, spelling, vocabulary, speaking, listening skills, all those kind of things fall into what we call literacy.
Wow, marvelous. So yeah, just tell us a little bit about that, something that stands out. Maybe what were the differences between teaching the first graders versus the people, the children who were slightly older, and what were the fun experiences that came out from there?
Well, first grade, you really had to teach them how to read, and that's not an easy thing to do. It's a very important grade level. And then, of course, the older kids in high school, you're getting them ready for college, most of them. But my favorite grades were fourth and fifth, and because they already knew how to read for the most part, and they understood my jokes and my dry sense of humor. And so they became my favorite, and so that was the grade level I wanted to write for.
Oh, wow.
That's kind of what
and that is
decided me.
And then that's the rough age group. I also see that the Botanical Detective series is Botanical Hill Detective series is sort of targeted towards it, the 9 to 12-year-olds.
Yeah, it's targeted for 9 to 12-year-olds, but now I say 9 years and up because I've discovered that a lot of adults like to read my books too.
Yes.
So I don't want to just limit it to kids. I mean, I write them, I write what I call mysteries with a twist of history. And what that means is I try to bring in some element of history that kids or even adults might not have ever heard of or might have forgotten. And an example of that is in my book 4 that came out last year. I included elements of Pearl Harbor, the attack on Pearl Harbor, and the Japanese internment camp that resulted from that. So that's what I do. I try to bring something interesting in that I don't think kids have ever heard of, or that adults maybe remember that much of anymore.
So tell us a little bit about the characters in the book. The 4, I see there are, I think, 4 detectives or 4 kids who are trying to solve and be sleuths of some kind. So introduce us to that world a little bit, please.
Okay. Well, I got my interest in mysteries from Nancy Drew, Mysteries and the Hardy Boys, from when I was a 4th grader. And so I decided I wanted to write mysteries that had these detectives, 2 girls and 2 boys. I wanted them to be 13 years old so that they might be a little bit older than my readers. And I wanted them to be role models for kids. My detectives are very polite and respectful. Two of my detectives are a girl and a boy, and they're twins. The boy's name is Lanny, and the girl's name is Lexi. And the other 2 are another boy named Moki, and Moki's from Hawaii. And my 4th character is a girl, and her name is Rani Kumar, and she is from India.
Yes, that was my guess when I looked at the description.
Yeah, and all of my characters are based on students that I knew or that I had in my classroom.
Wow, that's so wonderful. Yeah. And I'm guessing that these 4 have a good friendship that helps them on their adventures, and they also complement each other in their strengths and the camaraderie sort of carries this foursome together.
Exactly. Yeah, they're all best friends. Lanny and Moki are best friends, and Lexi and Ronnie are best friends. And Lanny is kind of the serious one. They call him a brainiac. He's the leader. He's the leader of the detective. And Lexi, his twin sister, is kind of the more emotional one. She loves poetry. She's into song, lyrics, music. Lanny likes old movies. Moki is sort of the comedian of the group, and he also loves to cook. But he, even more than loving to cook, he likes to eat. But he's a lot of fun, and he tends to be students' favorite character. Rani Kumar has she's very knowledgeable. She kind of is quiet, but when she has something to say, she really speaks forth. She's very strong, physically strong. She's very athletic. And she has a condition called synesthesia. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of that.
If I'm not mistaken, it is when one sense sort of excites another one or sort of triggers another one.
That's a really good definition of it, yeah. So when Ronnie hears a name, she tastes something.
Ah, interesting.
Yeah, and so Moki is convinced that Ronnie's synesthetic ability can help them solve mysteries.
Very
and so
interesting.
I try to bring a little element of that into each of the books sometimes, where it kind of looks like maybe she is using that ability, but she always says, no, that's not it. Moki's convinced that she's like a superwoman, that's her superpower.
Well, tell me, when you were 13 years old, what were you like?
Oh gosh, I was nothing like these detectives. I was very shy. I was not athletic. I barely knew my name. I was just very shy. I was afraid of my shadow. And but I was very good in school. And I knew that that's where I excelled, was at school. And in fact, I used to stay after school and help the teacher and hang out with the teacher. And I think that's where I first learned how to be a teacher. But no, I was not anything like my detectives. They're very brave. They're I mean, you have to be to solve the mysteries that they're solving. These are very serious mysteries that they're connected to serious crime.
So how old were you when you first picked up your Nancy Drew books? Like, what was the first book that you read, and how old were you that time?
I read them in order, and I picked up my first Nancy Drew book when I was 9 years old.
Wow, that's young.
And I used to save my money, my allowance, and every couple of weeks I would go up to the store and I would buy the next one in the series. And in fact, I have the entire collection still.
There's some 60 plus of them, right?
There's 64. 64. 64. Not counting. I don't have the ones that they started rewriting, but I've got the 64 that were done up until, I don't know, the 80s or something like that.
And how many times approximately have you read those books?
I have probably read each one 4 times. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe I could get into the Guinness Book of World Records from that. I don't know.
Or at least the biggest fan of Nancy Drew characters in the books. What would you tell the author of those books if you were ever to meet her?
If I could imagine and go back in time and talk with her, I would thank her for making me not only a better reader and writer, but just a better person. Because Nancy Drew, her character, had a lot of courage. And Nancy Drew, because I was so shy, Nancy Drew became my best friend. So that's what I would thank her for all of that.
Did you ever talk to Nancy?
Oh, yes, I did. I used to say, Nancy, no, don't go down those stairs. There's something down there. It's dangerous. Don't go down there. And I used to write little mysteries for her so I could control control things. She wasn't in danger.
Wow. So growing up in the neighborhood and in your family, like who was the person who was like the bookworm or the person who used to read the most?
I was.
Other than you?
But you couldn't have guessed that, right?
Yeah, tough one. So, but how about your friend circle? I know you said that you were very shy, but the few friends maybe you had, or your family, your parents. I don't know if you have siblings. How was that like? And did they tease you when you were like neck deep into your books?
Yeah, I have a twin sister, and she was more. That's where I got the idea of doing twins for my book. But my sister was more outdoorsy and more outgoing than I was. I had an older sister, 4 years older, and she was also like that. She had a lot of friends. They just kind of amazed me. I just how do you do that? How do you even go up and talk to somebody? I was happy to come home from school and curl up in the corner on my bed in my room and just read. And a lot of times I didn't hear my mom calling me to dinner. And one night she came into the bedroom, and all of a sudden my book went flying. It was a Nancy Drew book, actually. It went flying out of my hands because she grabbed it. And I was startled, and I looked up and I said, what's wrong? And she goes, I have been calling you to dinner for 5 minutes. I was so into my book, I absolutely didn't hear her calling me.
Sherrill, tell me, now the person that you were, you said that you were shy, you didn't know how to go and talk to people. Now, when you write a book and that book is ready and it's out there, then it's all about talking and marketing and putting on the smiley face and going and like talking to publishers and stuff. So how was that experience? Or by that time, had you recovered from the fear of speaking?
Oh yeah, I'm over that. I mean, I had to get over that if I was going to be a teacher.
Yes.
So in fact, I remember one day I was in college and I was doing my undergraduate work, and my goal of course, was to become a teacher. But I remember one day going, oh my gosh, if I'm going to be a teacher, I have to be able to talk to people. I have to get up in front of people. But I found that getting up in front of kids was really easy. I guess I was sort of natural at it because I've always loved kids. And I kind of think of myself as a big kid still.
Well, always helps to stay connected with that side of your mind.
Yes, yes.
Absolutely.
Especially to the right children's book.
Right. Yes, yes, yes. So during the time when you were teaching, and you obviously would have seen many batches of students come and through your classes, and you must have taught a lot of them. Did you see yourself in some of the kids who came to the class, the shy ones, the ones who loved books, and what was that connection like?
Oh, yeah, I saw myself in the shy kids. In fact, I always kind of would go up to them and try to draw them out safely. I wanted my classroom to be a place that kids felt safe in, where they felt, and I used to talk about that, like we're like a big family. Let's make sure that we all feel comfortable here with one another, that we feel safe to share with one another. And my last 2 years of teaching, in fact, Nick was in my class, Nick Wood, the one who's watching here, were the 2 best years of my teaching because the kids were so polite and so smart. And that's where my idea to write really came from. One day I was teaching a book club group, and one of my students said to me, Miss J, you could write a better book than this one.
Wow.
And I said, you know what? I'm going to accept that challenge. And so right after I retired from teaching, a few months later, I started to write. And that's where between Nancy Drew and my students, that's where my writing came from.
Oh, that's such an amazing story.
Yeah.
What was the reaction? I mean, I don't know if you were able to establish connection again, but did that particular kid, did he get to read the books that you wrote?
Her name was Adara, and I wasn't able to reconnect with her, but a couple of the other kids in the class came to my first book launch that I had in February of 2020. I reached out to as many kids as I could find, and those 2 of them came to my book launch, which I thought was really special.
Wow. Yeah. I can imagine. When you're writing for children, like you said, obviously all the 25 years, I know you said how many, 30 years of teaching?
35 years.
35 years of teaching.
Mm-hmm.
So all those years of being near, in some sense, the recipients or the readers of your books, what was the most challenging part and what was the simplest part as an author for you?
As an author, the simplest part, the simplest part was getting into the heads of my characters. When I'm writing, I kind of leave planet Earth, and I'm in a different zone, and I feel like I'm just listening to my characters tell me what to write, and I've heard other authors say the same thing. So I'm not the only one who's strange that way. The hardest part is trying to make history enjoyable for the kids. To try to make it fun, because my detectives and our challenge is to bring a challenging but fun mystery to the kids, and I want them to feel joy, and we want them to feel like they can be the best they can be.
Did your experience in teaching and being close to children and interacting with them day to day, did that help with the first part where like getting into their heads and their emotional space became easier or more natural?
Oh yeah, because I remember how they talk, what they're interested in. And when I do school visits now, I make sure I ask kids, like, what's going on? Like, what are the trends right now? What are the things you're interested in, you know? And I ask them questions too. Like, one day I asked, like, you guys, do people still say bro and dude? You know? because Lanny and Moki call each other bro and dude. And they said, oh, yeah, you know, we do. So I said, well, that's good. Okay, I'll keep using that. So things like that, you know, I'm trying to stay as connected to kids as I can, especially now that I don't have a classroom full of them in front of me every day. Yeah.
But what are the other sensibilities and the other care abouts that come up and that you have to be mindful about when you're writing or when you're curating your subjects?
Well, I have to remember the what are the characteristics of what are called cozy mysteries, because that's what I write, cozy mysteries for kids. And what that means is there is no blood and gore in the stories. You can allude to that. You can, like in my first book, a man died, but he died before the book started. So sure. I guess if you want to say there was a dead body in the book, that was it. But of course, you know, you have to watch. You can't have sex and violence. You can't have bad words. You know, you can't use foul language. You know, four-letter words, that kind of thing. Those things don't exist, and that's fine with me because I'm not the kind of person who uses that kind of language anyway. So it's not going to show up in my book.
Sure.
Yeah.
And these mysteries. When I looked at the covers of the books, one thing that like really caught my attention was the spice, right? I mean, there was eucalyptus and there was nutmeg and there was walnut, if I'm not mistaken. So what's going on there? I was very curious to know.
Thank you for asking that. My books are called the Botanic Hill Detectives Mysteries, and the kids live on Botanic Hill in this make-believe town in Southern California, which is roughly based on where I live in San Diego. It's just a much smaller version of San Diego, California, where I live, and it's where I grew up and where I still live. And the streets on Botanic Hill they range from A to Z, and they're all named after a botanical, like Nutmeg Street, Eucalyptus Street, Walnut Street, and so on. And so the kids are invited to solve a mystery. They're invited to a home or a business. And so that street that makes the title of the book is the street where the kids, in book chapter 1, where they are and where they're being introduced to the mystery. Yeah.
Okay.
So
now that connects the dots for me, the botanical and all that. Yeah. Very interesting.
And I'm not writing them in the order, obviously. I'm not writing them A to Z. I'm jumping around, however, you know, whatever strikes my fancy, whichever book I want to read at that moment. Yeah.
Why not?
Why not? Exactly.
Yeah. So I believe there are 5 books that are already out in the series. And the 6th one is coming out in 2024. Is that correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So what's the next one called?
Okay, the next one's going to be called Upas Street Shocking Inspector.
So a ghost is called? A ghost of some kind?
Yeah, so it seems. It's I'll tell you a little about this. The twist of history in book 6 is going to be the Universal Studios horror pictures from the 1930s and 40s.
Okay.
And I'm right now reading a biography about a man whose name was Kenneth Strickfaden. And Kenneth Strickfaden came to be known as Dr. Frankenstein's electrician.
Okay.
And he's the one who designed all of the machinery, like the mad scientist lab equipment that you see in the background if you watch the old Frankenstein movie.
Yes.
And all the lightning that's flashing around the laboratory and the lightning that bolts and all that ignite the life of the monster. Yeah. All of that was the artistry and science of Kenneth Strickfaden. So I'm going to bring that element into the story.
Okay. Okay.
And then because of the electrical aspect of it, I'm going to have a character who is kind of terrorizing the countryside, and he glows in the dark.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
And it ties into Kenneth Strickfaden and all of that electricity kind of business that I'm bringing in.
It sounds like you're having fun writing it.
I'm sorry?
It sounds like you're having a lot of fun writing it.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, I'm going to start writing it in about 3 weeks. I'm
Okay.
finishing my research right now and starting to kind of work on an outline a little bit of it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I think
So
it'll be fun.
have the kids in the school and the book clubs been reacting to the series of books? Do you get people and children asking you, when's the next book coming out? Tell us more, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I do. I get that when especially when I go to school visits,
Uh-huh.
and which I love to do. I wish I had more invitations to do that. By the way, I do school visits for free. I do them in
Sure.
person and virtually. So
Okay.
if you go
Okay.
on my website and you go to SherrillJoseph.com and you click on school visits,
Uh-huh.
you can find out how to do it and contact me and sign up.
When you look back at your teaching experience and journey and your personal journey, how much of that reflects and in what ways does it manifest itself in the pages that you write?
Well, there's a poet named Alfred Lord Tennyson, and he said, I am a part of all that I have met. And that's how I feel about my writing. I think I bring so much of my interest into writing, like my interest, like about these old movies from Universal Studios, for example. My love of Egypt, which was reflected in book 1. My love of African American history, which is reflected in book 3, The Walnut Street Phantom Rider, and so on. And and I was born on Pearl Harbor Day, December 7th. So that was reflected, of course, in my book 4, which was about Pearl Harbor and all that. So, yeah, I don't think I can separate myself from my writing. It's just who I am.
Mm-hmm. And how do you go about the process of writing? That obviously there's a selection of the subject. So what's the plot going to be about? So I think now you're in a stage where you've figured out what the plot for the next book is, and you're doing the research for that. But how do you first stumble upon the subject itself?
Well, something just comes into my head. Like I was watching one of those old Universal Studios movies a few months ago, and I thought, oh my gosh, I love these movies. I want to do something with that in one of my books. So
Mm-hmm.
it's usually like that. Sometimes I'm out walking, and one day we had a bad storm here in San Diego, and I went walking the next day, and I saw all these downed eucalyptus trees. And that gave
Ah,
me an idea for my second book, which is called Eucalyptus Street Green Curse. So I
sure.
never know where an idea is going to come from. I just try to keep myself open for it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
and do you plot then the entire book, or you just start writing and then starts appearing magically? Like what's your writing process?
Um, I do a little bit of plotting. What I try to do is I try to write down 10 to 20 chapter titles, and I just imagine, I picture the detectives, where are they in the process of solving the mystery? What might they be doing? Where might they be going? Who might they be talking to? And those become my chapters. And then I just start writing. I don't plot every little detail out. Like I said earlier, I listen to my characters, and I just
Mm-hmm.
try to take it where they want it to go. In fact, sometimes when I start a chapter, I don't know how it's going to end. And that might sound strange to readers and other writers, but that's what works for me. I just let it go where it's going to go. And I have a list next to me where I write down loose ends, as I call them, like clues I've given, red
Mm-hmm.
herring. I want to make sure by the end of the book I've tied all of that up, and so that I don't leave anything dangling for the reader. So that's how I make sure I don't forget anything. But I let the book go where it's going to go. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I think every author has a very, very distinct process. Although there are popular constructs on how things are done, but I believe everyone has their own unique twist and unique style to what works for them. And when I talk to authors and I speak with them, this is what mesmerizes me every time, that there isn't a template to follow, and everyone's following their heart. I mean, maybe that's the template.
Right. Yeah. I mean, there are terms in writing. One's called, are you a planner or are you a pantser? You probably heard that from other writers. Yeah. Yeah. People who plan, they plan. I know writers who do that. They plan out every little thing. They've got sticky notes like on a wall, and they've got everything plotted out. And I can't do that. That's not how I operate. And so I'm a pantser. I fly by the seat of my pants on it. And that's what works for me.
Yes, and it looks like it's working brilliantly. So why change the recipe of something that's not broken?
Thank you. Thank you for that.
So Sherrill, what is the advice that you give to? I'm sure that your students, some of your students also want to be writers, or they've expressed a desire to be, or you've met, I'm sure, budding writers. What's the one piece of advice that you would give from your experience of both teaching the language and also writing yourself?
Well, it's actually a kind of a two-pronged piece of advice. Sure. One is to read, because reading makes you smarter, and it introduces you to vocabulary, sentence structure, and of course how writers write. And of course then write. And don't let anybody tell you can't write. Just do it. Start putting your ideas down on paper, and you never know what you might create. Creative process is amazing, and it's so important, not only for the writer, but for the reader, because writers need readers and readers need writers.
Yeah, well said. Have you ever gotten stuck yourself wherein it's not about as much as about not knowing what to write, but it's just the act of writing?
Yeah, I get stuck sometimes. What I do, and what I tell other writers to do, other students, go take a walk. Leave it alone for a few days. Just let it be, and you'll be amazed that you might come back and suddenly be inspired. And I've done that many times. I just don't know what I'm going to write next, and the detectives, like, maybe they've taken a break and they're not telling me what to do, and I'm just not sure, and I just go take a walk, or I go have lunch with a friend or something, and then I come back to it, and lo and behold, I know what to do.
Yeah.
I try not to get too upset about it anymore. I used to think, oh my goodness, I'm not going to know what to do. I'm not going to become a writer, and now I just leave it alone and let it happen.
So I think the pressure of thinking that you're not doing anything adds to the pressure of not doing anything, and then that becomes a vicious circle that you kind of spiral downwards.
Right.
And what you're saying is just break the spiral, step out and forget about it, and then just maybe you snap back right into it.
That's a good way to think of it, to step out of the spiral. Yeah.
Was there any part during your journey as an author, or as a teacher perhaps, where you thought that if I had started writing in a certain way, like a story in a certain way, it would have ended better, and then you had to sort of go back again and then start from scratch, or maybe throw away portions that you had written? Then does that happen with you? Do you undo what you've done in a major way, or do you think that things kind of naturally flow for you?
They kind of naturally flow for me, I think, unless an editor tells me I need to rewrite something. and I have had to go back and rewrite a few things. Or I know when I wrote my first book, I ended up throwing out the first 7 chapters because the editor said to me, your book doesn't really start till chapter 7 because you got too much detail in there. You need to put that in more organically as the story developed. And that was probably my biggest learning curve when I first started to write. And now I totally see what she was talking about, and I don't make that mistake anymore.
A lot of editors and readers, I think the mantra is that if the first paragraph or two paragraphs not able to catch your attention, then readers tend to lose interest. Because
Exactly.
you go to a bookstore, pick up a book, you read maybe a page or two, and then you try to see, hey, I'm liking it or not. And if it doesn't catch your attention, then you're not going to pick it up.
Exactly.
So that, yeah, but I think that's a very valuable lesson, and I kind of echo and understand where that's coming from for sure.
Exactly.
The journey that you mentioned with your editor is something that I also want to elaborate a little bit more on. According to you, like what role does an editor play in bringing your thoughts to fruition? When you had an idea, you had a plot, you've written something, and you think that you've done a splendidly wonderful job, of course, and then you take it to the editor, and obviously it comes back from with feedback and maybe redlining and suggestions for what needs to change. Tell me your about what that has done to your work and to you as an author beyond this one instance or experience that you shared. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Um, I was looking for something interesting to write about snakes because Moki is terrified of snakes, and so I wrote something and I sent it to the editor, and she said, you know, I grew up in tropical countries, and why don't you have a snake like slither across someone's foot? And so I did that. I wrote that into the story, and it really became a very powerful part of the story in book 1. And I also had the kids trapped in the Moki and Lanny trapped in a reptile house. And all of that idea came from her suggestion about her stories telling me about growing up in countries where there were venomous snakes. Because I don't run across very many. I mean, we have rattlesnakes here in San Diego, but I don't run across them very often, fortunately. But my editor she's got her doctorate in English literature, and she and I are grammar nerds. And so, but she knows so much. I thought I knew a lot about grammar from being a teacher, but she knows so much. She's taught me so much about how to write a sentence correctly and how to use imagery. And I really am thankful that somehow I miraculously connected up with her. And I hope she's always my editor. Fabulous. Yeah.
Any parting words from you for the viewers today, or the ones who would see the video when I post it again?
Yeah, you know, I know you're in India. Where exactly are you in India, by the way?
Bangalore.
Okay. I would like to reach out to your listeners in India, and to you, of course, and ask if you have any ideas of maybe a building, a person, could be a historical figure from India, a legend, anything like that I could wrap a mystery around. Because I want the detectives to travel to India, which is where Ronnie Kumar is from, my character, and I want to do a mystery in India.
That's a very, very exciting question. And I think what we can do is we can put up a post and ask our readers to participate in that and maybe contribute ideas, and then we can pull those ideas together and send it to you.
Yeah, I love to read biographies, you know, and legends from countries and wrap mysteries around those kind of things. Like I know, like there's a big legend about the Taj Mahal, for example.
Yes.
But the Taj Mahal is pretty well known. I'm kind of looking for something that might be more obscure. Something that somebody from India really knows that maybe the rest of the world doesn't know that well, that might make a really interesting launching pad for a mystery. Yeah.
Sure. My mind's working, and I think I'll try to come back to you with some ideas.
I would love that. I'm very appreciative of that.
Yeah, and I'll run a poll on my account, and we'll see what contributions we get from the rest of the readers.
Wonderful. Thank you.
All right, Sherrill, I think we have ran through our time. It's almost an hour since we started. Thank you so much for coming online this morning and having this superbly wonderful chat with us. I am excited to get my hands on these books, and I have a feeling I'll be binging on reading these books.
Thank you. Thank you. I would love that.
All the best for the 6th book, and I'm sure it'll be a great success. And
thank you so much.
So much.
Thank you for this opportunity.
The pleasure is all ours. And yeah, have a great day ahead and talk to you again sometime. Thank you.
I hope
Bye bye.
so. Thank you. Bye-bye.